Lush, southern Chester County, 45 minutes outside Philadelphia, is a community with two faces. It's both a bedroom community of large, expensive homes for upscale professionals and also the mushroom capital of the world, with big sheds known as doubles growing mushrooms in dark indoor gardens. It's a stunning contrast. People browsing through trendy boutiques in Kennett Square, and 4,000 Mexican migrants making low pay, working long hours at the back-breaking job of harvesting mushrooms because nobody else wants to do it.
Tenemos que vivir en las casas donde nos pongan.
We've got to live in the houses where they put us.
Y hacer lo que nos digan.
And do whatever they tell us to do.
Because they often have no choice, many migrants are crowded into cramped, unsafe, foul-smelling housing.
Put it this way, if a condition exists where you can make a buck by exploiting people, somebody's going to find a way to do it, and that's what happens here.
Even though conditions in many places here have improved as ordered by law, our Channel 10 News investigation reveals migrants in some places here are still often exploited. Forced to work in unsafe conditions, housed inhumanely, and ignored by the very government agency that's supposed to protect their rights.
Porque mira allá abajo.
Take a look at the floor.
Hacia arriba.
Take a look at the ceiling.
Bulmaro Medrano has been a migrant for 14 years. His housing, provided by the grower, smells of sewage, has holes in the floor, a toilet in the shower, and is not likely to be fixed up.
Por mucho tiempo ya le he dicho, pero
For a
ya me
long
cansé.
time, he's been saying that he's going to fix it, but I've gotten tired.
Y no hace caso.
And doesn't do anything about it. It does no good.
In some places, we found migrants living in overcrowded housing, coping with broken plumbing, unsafe wiring stretching room to room. The 5 men in this migrant camp clean their clothes on a cinder block, cook on a hot plate, and Jaime Garcia says they've been told they can't buy a refrigerator or stove.
Yeah, he say it's not fair because he's not Puerto Rican or American, but he still has the same right like anybody else.
The American Mushroom Institute, speaking for growers, argues most conditions have improved drastically, shrugging off the bad conditions as isolated.
I'm asking about those specific cases.
As I said earlier,
That's an exploitation of these migrants.
no, I do not, no. Any more than any other type of exploitation in any agricultural pursuit or any other endeavor in our whole society.
No group in America gets protection from the government that doesn't have some kind of power. You know, there's an awful lot of talk by our government officials about compassion and helping poor people and all this sort of thing. But, you know, the people who are powerless, they're basically invisible, and that's what the mushroom workers are out here.
Most of the migrants live in farm labor camps provided by the grower they work for. The conditions sometimes overcrowded, dirty, unsafe.
Those people who are too scared or too exploited to be able to make themselves heard and felt, they're going to have a hard time.
Most of these migrants only now gaining legal status originally crossed the border illegally to make money for their impoverished families in Mexico.
Yo no quisiera dejar a mi familia en México, pero pues hay la necesidad de buscar un poco, pues, para que viva mejor la familia.
I really hate leaving my family behind in Mexico, but there's a necessity that I feel to come here and work and try to help them.
But why do Eloy and his friends have to tolerate these illegal housing conditions? A hole in the combination bathroom laundry is an open drain for leaky plumbing. When we visited in July, 7 men were crowded into 2 bedrooms with no closets, poor ventilation, and a single bare bulb for light. Why doesn't the law protect them from this? DER, Pennsylvania's Department of Environmental Resources, has $260,000 this year alone to make sure migrant housing is safe, humane. But our Channel 10 News investigation reveals DER inspections are spotty, enforcement is weak, and loopholes encourage exploitation by mushroom growers.
Yo, como le digo, voy a acabar 2 años aquí, ¿verdad? Y así he estado.
I've been here for 2 years, and it's always been like this. The conditions have been bad.
In the case of Miguel and Eloy's housing, DER records that Channel 10 obtained claim only a family lives in this housing, so it is not regulated as a migrant labor camp. But that's not true now. The owners admit 6 men who work for them have lived in this housing for a year. Two of the men unrelated to anyone else in the housing.
You just don't want to have to abide by these regulations. That's the bottom line here.
Which regulations? I'll do anything.
Regulations say you got to clean the place up. You can't have open drains. You can't have overcrowded housing.
We don't. We're going to space it out.
All right, so what's the problem?
You come back.
What's the
No
problem? Why do you say a family lives here when it's not true?
Jesus. Up to this last season, that's all we had for 3 years was 4 men only.
At one point during Channel 10's visit, the owners asked Eloy if this housing is better than being kicked out in the street. Eloy said this is better, and the owners asked us to leave.
What are you asking? Then get the hell off the property.
These pictures of migrants are portraits of isolation. Some here will only talk about it anonymously.
People ask me sometimes in the store, what are you doing over here? Why don't you go back to your country? You guys come over here to suffer.
We've already shown you how Mexican migrants who work in southern Chester County's mushroom houses are sometimes mistreated, housed in dirty, unsafe labor camps, unprotected by laws forbidding such conditions. But the migrants also face broader problems: discrimination, isolation from this community.
Quiere uno preguntarle por alguna cosa.
Other times you go to the stores, you ask for something.
Entonces, no le hacen caso a uno.
And they don't pay any attention to you.
No, nomás le dicen espérate o como que sin
just tell you, wait.
lo escucharan.
As if they haven't even heard
En
you.
cambio bien.
In these rolling hills of southern Chester County, upwardly mobile professionals in big homes bask in this area's reputation as the mushroom capital of the world. But without these migrants from Mexico who speak little English, this mushroom capital would be out of business. Growers say no one else wants to do the work. People who don't want the migrants would suffer without them.
It's the only industry we have. I mean, if you were to take away the mushroom industry from most of the surrounding municipalities in this area, there'd be nothing. There'd be no other tax base other than residents.
The Needhams are two of many growers in this area trying to improve migrant housing. The standards they set and enforce in the migrant labor camp on their own farm demonstrates growers can provide decent, safe housing for migrants if they want to. But the Needhams argue the community shares the blame for bad migrant housing.
For someone to say we're going to construct a housing project for Mexicans, believe me, it would not go through. The community would not stand for it.
When growers don't provide housing, claiming it's too expensive, migrants often become squatters in abandoned buildings. This place is called La Cueva, the cave. Technically, this is no longer a farm labor camp. The owner closed it after the people living here complained about these conditions, said they were going to stop paying the rent until he fixed the place up. Instead, he closed it. But 3 months later, people are still living here in this squalor because they say they can't find any other place to live.
Why can't you find an apartment? I mean, not enough apartments, too much money?
¿Por qué no puede conseguir apartamento?
Porque a veces no le quieren rentar los apartamentos a los mexicanos.
Sometimes they don't want to rent an apartment to a Mexican guy.
La Casa del Pueblo, an agency founded 8 years ago to build low-income housing, has yet to break ground on a single development.
One municipality just practically threw us out bodily. They don't want those kind of people in their neighborhood. They don't want that kind of housing in their backyard.
In many ways, the migrants' troubles stem from feelings that they are different from us. Mushroom grower Donald Needham points out they are a lot more like us than we realize.
We're all immigrants. We're just at another stage in immigration. And that goes way back to our forefathers. Everyone's an immigrant.